Right, well as you can see here, I've got a lot of new goodies to go through. There's been a lot of shopping going on. I won't go through everything right now because that will take quite a lot of time to explain. So I'll just pick out the key things that I need for today's project. So first up, the main component, which I've been waiting for a while, is one rubber silicone heating mat. As you can see there, with power cable, and this has also got a temperature sensor in it. So I need this, one black box, some power cable. This hopefully should be a thermostat controlling unit. Yep, perfect. So basically I can put together my heating mat now, which I'm really excited about. I've been waiting for a week for this to arrive. So this is a very small one. It's about 400 mil by 350 mil, and it's just basically to use as a proof of concept. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to put it on really one of the damp spots in the deck, put a sandbag on it to weigh it down against the deck, and just let it run for 6 or 8 hours or a day and see if that starts to adjust the moisture content. If it does, the next thing I'll do is borrow a vacuum with some vacuum bagging around it, and I'll set that up so it actually draws air through the deck against that heated mat and see if that also makes an improvement. If it all works beautifully, then I will order up a custom rubber mat, maybe like 1.5 meters long by 500 mil across, to lay against the deck and start to heat it and dry it up in big steps. But this is the first step, which is to make a proof of concept and see how it works. So I'll get on with that now. Okay, so I've had this heating mat on the deck working for the last 8 hours. I've basically run it 4 hours a day over the last 2 days. And I'm just going to use my moisture meter now to see if that's made any difference to the moisture in the deck. So here you can see the setup I've got. I've got the mat laid down on the deck, and then there's a controller there. The controller's been set to 65 degrees for the last couple of days. I've just had a sandbag on this to keep it weighted down and pressed hard against the deck, and a bit of tape on the side. Now there's foil against this. Oh, it's really hot. So this mat comes with adhesive on this side and paper, and I couldn't run it at 65 degrees with that paper on, so I peeled the paper off to expose the adhesive. But then, to prevent the adhesive from sticking to the deck, I put on just some tin foil, and yeah, it's transferred the heat well. It's really hot to touch. Yeah, and the deck feels really, really warm too. I actually went just a few minutes ago on the other side into the cabin and put my hand up, and from the inside of the cabin I could feel the heat coming off the deck as well, so it's definitely getting that heat through. So let's now have a look to see if it's changed the readings at all. Okay, so here I had 85 at depth. Let's see what it says now. Oh my god, 85. Here it had 90 at depth. Yeah, it's saying 100 now. It's actually got even more moist. 50 here. Yeah, it's still 50. 85 here. Oh my god, 90. Bugger, it's done nothing. Absolutely nothing. What a waste of time. Yeah, so that's really disappointing. The deck was really warm, and as I said, this has been running for a couple of days, so if it was going to change the moisture levels, it should have by now. Even though this meter's not very good, I don't really rate this product at all, it should have moved a little bit. And maybe what could be happening is the decks are getting warm, the air is getting warm, and potentially drying out some of that foam, but maybe the condensation can't escape, so it's just trapped there. So my second thought now is to maybe try and draw the air through that core somehow using a vacuum. If I could use all these screw holes to get warm air into the core and then drawn through the core, maybe that will dry it out, rather than just putting like a heater on the top. Maybe I need warm air going through the core to dry out. All right, so I'll have another think about that. Now tomorrow I've booked in the company that makes prefabricated teak decks to come in and digitise the deck. So they're coming in with a laser measure detector of some sort. My understanding is they'll set that up in different parts around the deck, and that will then create like a three-dimensional surface view of the dimensions and curvature of the deck. They'll then use that to, I guess with some CAD sort of aid, come up with a teak deck template and give me a final price on that. So I'm going to have to leave the project of drying out the deck for a couple of days whilst I focus on getting that ready. There's one last piece of teak that I need to get off before they come around, and that's down the bottom of the cockpit, as you can see there. So I'm going to have to basically take off the steering console and the steering wheel so that I can remove that, so I can get to this last piece of teak here. Okay, so this is the console. I've just taken off the compass, and I guess I need to get down here to start disassembling it. There's 4 screws here, and then on the throttle control I probably need to disassemble that so I can unlink the cables. I guess unlink the cables to the throttle, the kill switch, remove the chain that's part of the steering gear, and then there shouldn't be anything connecting the console to the bottom of the boat and the engine bay where all the cables come out. Okay, so I'll start that first. Well, it's starting to look like there's actually more of my boat down here than there is of my boat up here or here. She's looking pretty bare at the moment. Not much left at all. Okay, in order to finish the hull preparation beneath the waterline by doing all the pinhole filling and then applying a gel shield, I've got a couple more skin fittings to remove. Now, I'd left these to remove later because they're on the other side of the engine, and to get to these from the inside, there's not a lot of room because you need to crawl over the engine to get to these, and even if you can get to them, there's just no room to get a wrench in to remove the locking nuts, which are very tight. So I'd always thought that I'd leave these until I'd remove the engine, because with the engine out of that bay there's a lot more space. I can then get there to remove these. But given that it'd be nice to just get everything out so I can do the hull, I have just started grinding out some of these that are too hard to get to, because I've now resigned myself to the fact that I'm not going to reuse all of these skin fittings. I'll just have to end up getting new ones, which is fine because they're 30 years old. So with these that are too difficult to get to from the inside, I've just been cutting them out with a grinder by doing a sort of criss-cross cut through the skin fitting and then sort of knocking those pieces out with a hammer and cold chisel. So I'll just show you how I'm doing that in case you're interested in seeing. So first up, I just put some tape around the perimeter of the skin fitting. And of course, this isn't going to protect the GRP or anything from the grinder, because if the grinder gets into contact with that, it's just going to cut through it. It's just really kind of like a helper for me to see when I've got the cutting wheel right against the GRP. So as soon as I see that I'm cutting through this tape, then I know that I'm right up against this fiberglass, and I need to be very careful. Okay, it's a little bit tough knocking those pieces out, but the more segments you can make from it, the easier it is. And it's just always hard to get that last little piece of material that's binding them together. And obviously you're sort of working in some awkward positions trying to get all the way around. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to switch over and start the preparation for the new cap rail. Okay, the second thing that I finished up yesterday that I'm checking on this morning is I put some epoxy into this crack or split along the deck to hull join, and I've clamped it together put some epoxy down here and screwed this down to bring this back before this was all opened up. But I think I'll leave this cure for another 12 or so hours because, again, because of the cold weather and the humidity, I'm not sure this is ready for me to take the clamps off. I had wanted to take these clamps off to use them for the other stanchion base over there, but for now I think I'll just let this go, give it another day to cure, and then I'll release this. Okay, well I'll just start by cleaning up this cap rail first. Okay, well here goes nothing. Okay, I've opened it up so we can see down into this cavity now. I can see there's this kind of crack along here in this filling material, and then there's a second crack along here. And so this has kind of expanded and pushed the sides apart from each other. So I think I will need to try and get this up, remove all this, so that I can squeeze this back together. Just thinking about how I'll do this. Could try the scraper blades. Well, let's try this actually. Okay, well I opened that seam up, I cut along the top and cut 2 strips of the top of the cap rail off, like this. This is just the laminate. And that opened up that cavity there, and I was able to cut through and tap out big chunks of the cement. And this is sort of what it looks like. So parts of this had crumbled away and sort of fallen down to the bottom. And that material there which was preventing the 2 sides of the hull from coming together and was ultimately creating that bulge there. So there's some good news and there's some bad news, of course. The good news, now that this cavity's been opened up, it's really easy to get these 2 sides of the deck to come together again, so I can get a clamp onto that. Without too much pressure, I can sandwich these together. So that's good. Now the bad news, first of all, I've got this really big split in my boat now, and I'm not quite sure of how I'm going to laminate this back. I need to think about that. But worse than that, as I was getting down to the bottom, I could see this sort of mud-like mixture with some water in it, and beneath all of that filler cement was the foam, which is the core between the 2 skins of the deck. And as I squeezed that foam, it looks a bit like this. As I squeezed this, just water came out, drops of water. So the foam is really super saturated. It's just wet. So it's a lot worse than I thought. And now I'm wondering about, realistically, how I'm going to dry this out without cutting the skin off, because yeah, it's just completely saturated. There's just water sat there and just a little bit of pressure and all the water squeezed out. So it's 2 step forwards, 1 step backwards, unfortunately. Be interesting when I do the rest of these to see if they've all got that real wet core down the bottom. I mean, it could just be localized because this is where the stanchion base is and water was coming down this cavity here, maybe, or maybe the entire tow rail was like that. And most of the readings against the tow rail are very high moisture content, unfortunately. So I suspect that's where the water sort of run in that core and then gone to the lowest part, which is the tow rail, and just sat there. All right. I'm going to get some lunch and think about this for a while. Okay, well I think I'll leave the update here for this week. In terms of progress, well, I've had somebody come out to measure up for a teak deck, although I think maybe that's premature now given the state of the moisture in the deck. But anyway, that's been done. I've made a little bit more progress filling up all those pinholes. I've almost completed the starboard side now. I've opened up that toe rail to rebed the stanchions where the deck to hull joint had split along that seam there. So there's 3 of those that I've opened up. I guess I've got that last bit of teak off in the cockpit. So I guess the biggest problem at the moment, which I still haven't solved, is how to dry out the damp core. I've tried that heat mat and I heated the deck up for a couple of days and that didn't work. So I think I'm still interested in the concept of trying to use a vacuum to draw warm air through the core and see if that will dry it out. I guess I've discovered that it is actually really saturated in the corner of the toe rail. As I said before, when I was squeezing it, it was just wringing water out of it. So that's, you know, it's very, very wet. And I think that's going to be the biggest problem to solve. If I can't find a way of drying it out naturally, then the only alternative is to rip up the skin and open up the deck to let it dry out and potentially put some more foam back in and then seal the top down again. I really don't want to do that because that will add a lot more work. But at the same time, I can't really proceed with getting the teak deck on until this issue is resolved. So anyway, maybe by next update I'll have a vacuum that I can try and I'll let you know how that goes. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next week.